Welcome to the Steady On Stronger Together podcast. I am your host, Angie Bauman. I have read countless Christian fiction books over the past 25 years or so, but it's been a while since I read a story like All Manner of Things by Susie Finkbeiner. It was the kind of book that I stayed up too late reading and did not want to put down because Susie has this amazing ability to develop characters that draw you in, not only into their life circumstances, but seemingly into their very heart and soul. And in today's episode, I am joined by my fiction-loving friends, Lisa and Maria, and a mutual ministry friend of mine and Susie's, also named Lisa. And we're going to talk about these characters that Susie has developed called the Jacobson Family. We're going to talk about life in the late 1960s. And we're going to talk about how researching this book grew Susie, both as a writer and as a person. Let's listen in. Good evening, Steady On community, and welcome to Virtual Book Club Night. It is June, and we are in a fiction selection this month. We have been reading All Manner of Things by Susie Finkbeiner. Am I saying that right? Finkbeiner? Yes,
You
good.
are.
Okay, I really should do that before we go live. That way I don't have to ask. But Susie is here with us tonight, and we are absolutely delighted to have you. Welcome to the Steady On community.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to it.
It is my delight. I have to say, I've been stalking you a little bit on social media, and you put up maybe a week or so ago how much you love book clubs. And I'm like, oh, she loves book clubs. She's going to love us. I just know. So we've been reading this together, and joining me tonight with Susie are my dear friends, Maria and Lisa. And we are coming together to just, I hope for the next half hour or so, just talk about Susie's work and this book in particular, maybe get behind the scenes just a little bit and also just offer some fun and encouragement. So Susie is a wife, a mother, a novelist. She is a best-selling author and has been the recipient of many awards. And this particular book was selected, All Manner of Things was selected as the 2020 Michigan Notable Book. I have to ask, there was quite a list of awards that you've been given for your books. And I just wondered, do you have an award in particular that kind of just stands out to you as something particularly meaningful? Could I ask you that before we even get started?
Absolutely. You know, the Michigan Notable Book was shocking. In fact,
Really?
Yeah. I didn't enter it. So I have no idea how they got my name. But when I got the email from it's run by the Michigan Library System. And when the head of special collections emailed me, he actually had to find me through Facebook because I'm hard to get a hold of sometimes.
Yes, you are. I will say. Good for you. I'm good.
So when I got that message, I almost wrote back, "Are you scamming me? Like, that's not funny." Like, because I didn't believe it. But it was such an honor to be recognized not only by the library from my home state, the library that kept me in books all through my childhood, through my children's childhoods, but also by the state that I adore. It was just really such an honor.
You have another book coming out this summer, right? A new book that's about to launch into the world. Can I ask you about that before we even get started too?
The Nature of Small Birds does release in just a few weeks on July 6th. And it is set in 3 different timelines. So it's 1975, 1988, and 2013. And it tells the story of a family who, from Michigan, adopts a little girl from Vietnam at the very end of the United States involvement in Vietnam. And I originally wanted to write it just set in 1975, but adoption is not just a small story, it's a lifetime. And I wanted to represent that in the story. So I just, without telling my editor, I changed how I was writing the story. And then COVID hit. And I was writing the most complex storyline I've ever thought of while, children were home doing virtual school and
Yes.
the world was mad, but
kind
it
of
worked.
crazy. Yeah.
It worked.
Good. It's been interesting. I've talked to some other people who have created some, for them, unusual or particularly challenging, or something that required them to go deeper or something. I think the pandemic did all kinds of things to us. And I'm so looking forward to the next one. And the little bird's name is Twix. Do I have that right?
Yes. Yes. I did a name the bird contest on my Facebook page, and Twix was the winner. And
I love it. Yeah, that's fantastic. So, well, let me ask you this. When you and I were emailing about connecting and talking about this book, All Manner of Things, and I expressed to you how much I was loving it. At that point, I was still kind of in the middle of it, hadn't finished it yet. And I just said, I'm loving it so much, which is absolutely true. It really touched me and us. I know the girls, Lisa Wood and Maria, we were talking before we went live, and it really impacted us kind of at a deep place. And so your writing is just gorgeous. But when we were emailing about that, you said back to me, oh, I'm so glad you love it. This one is so special to me. And I wonder, I know all your books are special to you. I believe that. I talked to enough authors that I'm like, oh yeah, they all have a special place in your heart. But I thought I would just ask, what about this one is special to you? Why is this one special to you?
You're right. They are all special, but all for very different reasons.
Sure.
This one, I think it was really fun because I could connect with my parents a little bit in a different way as I was writing it. My dad wrote his memoir of serving in Vietnam in the war for me to use as research. And I'm not just talking like 50 pages. It was full on 450 pages of his memoir. So it gave me a lot of insight into him, about who he was when he was 18 and serving in a war.
Right.
And also insight into who he is now. And then connecting with my mom over fashion and music and all of those things. I'm the kind of author who immerses herself in the research. So my kids and I, we listen to Beatles and Rolling Stones and all. I mean, probably not good for young children to listen to the Rolling Stones, but
there's no judgment here. No worries.
Yeah, appreciate it. But the family also, writing that family, they just became so vivid to me in a way that hadn't happened to me before with characters. And I think that the writing of that book awakened something in me as a writer and a novelist, just to become more intimate with my characters and to allow that closeness. And I know that sounds crazy to people who don't write fiction, but we have to become part of the story in some ways. So that's one of the reasons it was so special. Those characters really got to me.
I want to ask the other readers with us tonight this question to them, but I'll say it's apparent how much you immersed yourself in this town. Is this a real town? Fort Collins, right? Do I have that? No, that's your town. Okay. And you immersed yourself in this town. I could see their home. I could see the diner where Annie worked. I could visualize that perfectly in my mind. Now, is it the same way you did? Probably not, but because I felt them, I felt your immersion in that, and you were able to pass that along to us, I believe, because I really did feel like I was almost like in a movie scene. Like it was that real to me. I don't know. One of you other ladies chime in. Was there, how did you feel the characters or the scene? Was it similar for you guys? Anybody can go.
I thought, yes, all the character development was just amazing.
Phenomenal.
Like, knew the characters. I especially like the family dynamics in that they had their struggles, but they weren't, it wasn't just so dysfunctional. They all, it just felt like us. It felt like my family, it really did. And that is the part that I just really appreciated. Nobody was just completely off the charts, and they were very, very real. And so I felt like I was at the table with them when they were eating whatever she couldn't cook well, and or having meatloaf, and stuff like that. And you just felt like I felt like I was in the room with them. It was wonderfully done. I just love the way you wrote it.
Go ahead,
Thank
Susie.
you. I was going to say that meatloaf scene was so much fun to write. And for anyone that hasn't read it, once you get to that scene, you'll understand why it was so satisfying to write.
Yes, very satisfying. Very satisfying. I could hear the thud. Yeah. Maria or Lisa, did any comments about the scene, the characters?
I love the characters too. I love character-driven novels. In this novel, I mean, the characters were just so well fleshed out. It's these relationships that are imperfect relationships, but that you sense the love in the relationship anyways.
I think too, mine's not so much about the characters themselves, but we've already talked about the setting being part of the character, and like the old ship, I love that you gave it a nickname of the little lake, and the loons. My question is, like, the loons kind of were just woven in. Are those like real birds that are there in Michigan with you? Or, I'm like, oh, they're back. Oh, I could almost envision them. That I was going to look up on Google what they really sounded like.
Yes, we have loons here in Michigan, and they are these, they kind of look like ducks, but they can't walk outside the water because their poor little feet are really far back on their bodies. But they have this very haunting, almost wolf-like howl and different vocalizations. And if you do Google, make sure that you are ready, because it might be like, it's a little creepy. But once you hear them, it's beautiful. And I remember when I was a kid being in northern Michigan. So I grew up around here in Lansing. I would go up to northern Michigan, and you would hear these loons at night. And I remember someone telling me that it was a ghost, and I believed them. But there's just something to me that's wild and special about nature, and the way that God put all these critters together to kind of just, I don't know, delight us and to help us see his nature. And loons were definitely a major theme in the book about, calling to one another and waiting for the other one to call back. So with Annie and her father, with Annie and Mike, just that call and response was really important to me in the book.
I also appreciated your attention to detail in fleshing out the not main characters, because I think like there wasn't a drop in the story in terms of like, okay, well, we know these characters real well, but then, even like the owner of the diner, like it's a small character in some ways, but added such important, in a few scenes, it was his role, it was transformational, right? Like his role in their life was so important. And so even some of the what I would call smaller characters were just so, they weren't small at all. Their impact was very much felt. So
the best friend and
Yes.
David. But I think the grandparents, I liked the way you had the grandchildren relationship with the grandparents, because so often in society the grandparents are kind of shoved aside because they're older. And they had so much respect for their grandparents and love for them, and to care for them and to go to visit them. I really liked that part of the story. It's outstanding.
I think how you handled the family, I want to talk about the Jacobson family, like how you were talking about getting to know them so well as you were writing. And one of the things that I really appreciated about them was just the way that they acknowledged each other's weaknesses and shortcomings, right? They recognized it was true that they were hurting over different things in their lives, or struggling, or didn't even agree maybe sometimes with the decisions one or the other one was making. And yet they consistently led with love. I think like even if they were hurting, they wanted to love the other people well. And I just wondered, was that just intentional on your part? Is that something that, what message, is there a message you're trying to communicate when you create a family that has, like Lisa Littlewood said, imperfect relationships, and yet a family that I think most of us would say, I would like that. I would like to be in that family.
Well, I think that's, I would like to be in that family. When I was crafting the story in the beginning phases, it was just Mike and Annie. Those were the two siblings, and that was all it was going to be. And I thought, man, this family really needs like a teddy bear. Just need a sweetheart. And I was at church when I thought that, and I looked across the room at my friend Joel, and I said, this family needs Joel. And so I went up to him and I said, hey, I'm going to write you into my novel. And he was like, okay,
Cool.
And yeah, I mean, he was probably 25 at the time. And I was like, I'm just going to pretend I knew you when you were 14. So it's going to be fine. And his character's in his entrance into the novel changed the tone of the family completely, so that they were a lot sweeter to one another and a lot more encouraging to one another. And Joel, real Joel, thinks it's so cool that he was in a novel, but it's just amazing to me how one character can change the entire tone of a novel and just really improve things. And so I was so glad that I thought about that and I was able to put him in, because he changed the entire tone of the novel.
What do you think he brought or needed that made that big of a difference in the family dynamics, the character Joel?
Well, I think he was the baby,
Mhm.
and being the baby, I know people want to take care of the baby. No matter how old the baby is, they want to take care of them. I'm 43, they still want to take care of me. But I think that desire to take care of him and to protect him and to kind of shield him, that also like overflowed onto how they related to one another. And it just was so fun to see the characters kind of develop that, and especially Mike and Annie developing that kind of maturity, the emotional maturity to do that. And you know, I think especially Mike and Annie having remembered what it was like to have their dad around and then not, they wanted to fill that spot a little bit sometimes.
Sure. Yeah. I thought one of the other things I thought was really like brave or really important was, I don't think I'm giving anything away too much. The father is estranged, as Susie just said, or has left the family. And yet there continues to be a connection with him, and how they maneuver that, because he has hurt them deeply and he continues to hurt them deeply, and they continue to accept what he can offer. Is that fair? Or how would you describe? I think that's really interesting, because I think, again, that gives hope in relationships where I think they didn't expect him to come. Well, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Talk to us about Frank a little bit, and his relationship with the kids and even his wife.
Frank had the potential to be a very tragic character. I think kind of a Johnny Nolan from A Tree Grows in Brooklyn type character, where it's just sad. But I wanted to show his redemption. And years ago, I read an article about a man who was suffering from PTSD after one of the world wars, and I don't remember which one it was. And one day he left his family and he went hiking, and he didn't come back. And he left a note saying, I need to walk the war off.
Wow.
They didn't see him again. And something about that really bothered my spirit. You know, it really, it hurt to read about another family going through something like that. And I just thought, well, what if he did come back? What would the family be like? And I didn't want the typical, everybody hates him and rejects him or tells him off, or, you know, because that's too easy. It's too easy to go that route. I wanted to go the hard way, and I wanted to show the family being the bigger person, and to show that sometimes we're wrong when we're upset with someone for doing what they think is the best. And we get upset with them. They're trying. And I think he was trying, and he thought the best thing was to leave. So
And it's a redemption story without being, sorry, Maria, tied up in a bow. It's not perfect when he comes back, right? Like it's not, it's like this is something that it is like this is what better looks like. And this may be what the best of better looks like. And still it's a struggle. But we're here and we're together. I don't know, there was just something so truthful to me about that and the way that they received him and struggled with it, continued to struggle with his decision.
Thank you. And I think, I think we all know families who have gone through a similar situation. And sometimes I just want to say to the person that's trying to make his entrance back or her entrance back, you're worthy of love. You're worthy of being loved. And I hope it works out in some way. It won't be perfect.
Yeah.
It won't be like it was before.
Yeah.
But I want grace for you and I want mercy for you.
And a redemption story doesn't take it away and take it back to the way it used to. A redemption story takes what's been hurtful and shines the light of Christ into it and says, I can work with that, right? I can actually, the thing that you're trying to hide from might be the thing that makes you all the stronger because you know you can do this. Yeah. That's good. That's good. So not only that, with PTSD, you tackled some other pretty big things in this story that were kind of like in the background, and yet they weren't because they're so big. I don't exactly know how to say that well, but the issue of racism, the war protests, the Vietnam War, the PTSD, like estrangement from family, a lot of issues. And I just wondered, what motivated you to include those things? Was God teaching you about something? Was that intentional, or was it just like, hey, this is the way the world was, and so I have to portray it accurately? Would you speak to that for a minute?
Absolutely. The 60s were packed. They were absolutely packed with protests and civil rights movement. And I mean, I adored researching the 60s because there was so much to learn. And that our culture really shifted a lot in the 60s. You saw some factions between different cultural identities. And I just thought, I can't write a 60s book without representing how fast-paced life was. And this is the TV generation. They were all watching TV so much. Like, I'm shocked by how much they watch TV. But that was the beginning of knowing everything that's going on all the time. It really was. And now we're like super on it because our news is not a half an hour. It's all day. There was so much I left out. There was so much I couldn't include. I wanted to represent how complex of a time it was. And especially for a girl who's 18, to be processing all of these things that are going on in Northwestern Michigan is predominantly white still. Yeah. And to bring David into the mix and have his skin color be an issue. It just felt right for me to include all of these things to represent how much upheaval there was, and even in these small spaces. It's funny because I was talking to my mom when I told her I'm going to write a late 60s book, and she said, well, we weren't all hippies. And so I said, all right, I'm not going to write a single hippie in. I wanted to represent that in some parts of the country, they were like 10 years behind the rest of the country. And that was kind of where Fort Colson was at the time.
Let me ask this. I think when I talk to authors so often, and then girls, get ready, because I want to know if you guys have some other questions too. I think a lot of times you get to a point in your work, you're going along. Tell me if this is true for you. You're going along and it seems to be okay. And then all of a sudden you're like, this is a hot mess and I'm not sure where this is going. And maybe you fight through some discouragement, or you think, I did it before, or you think, well, the one before won Michigan Notable 2020 or something. What am I going to do now? You get that. And I want to know, what, if you're willing to share it, what did God teach Susie as you put I know you talked about your parents, but what did he teach you as you were writing this?
First of all, and other writers are going to hate me. So throw your
You don't
tomatoes.
face any discouragement. This is what you're going to say here.
Well, for all manner of things, it came
Oh,
out clean
wow.
and it came out easy.
Mm-hmm.
All manner of things came out clean. Like it was one of those books that was just like, I've arrived. I have learned how to write without any problems.
Okay.
So,
I'm thinking there's a but to that.
but the next one is this one. And
Okay.
this
Oh, yeah.
Stories That Bind Us, that book, I struggled through every
Wow.
page. It was
Mm.
emotionally taxing, spiritually taxing. There were times when I would text my editor and say, this book isn't going to happen.
It's going to happen. Mm-hmm.
I will give you the money back and
We'll part as friends.
and I will go to being a house cleaner for the rest of my life in my kitchen, because there was something about it. And there was pressure because of Michigan Notable Books.
Sure. Yeah.
There was pressure because All Manner of Things was doing so well. And it touched on the Stories That Bind Us touched on my worst fear, which is losing my husband early, which is not a spoiler because it happens really fast. And one of my deepest woundings, which was dealing with a close relative who was dealing with profound mental illness. So I went from All Manner of Things that just kind of flowed out of me to Stories That Bind Us, which tore me apart.
Yeah.
And I think that I went through a lot of imposter syndrome, which I'm
Yes.
sure a lot of writers talk about. just as
Absolutely.
they're going to find out this time that I am lying, that I'm
Mhm.
not actually able to do this, that I could never do this. I was fooling them.
Yeah.
But then for some reason, I kept getting this thought, the Lord delights in you. The
Yeah.
Lord delights in you. And a friend sent me a text message about the verse that talks, I can't remember if it's Zephaniah or Zechariah, because those names are too close together.
That's right.
But it talks about how the Lord will delight over you in song.
Mm.
And so a friend texted me that after I'd been thinking about it, and a second friend sent me a Facebook message with that verse. And even if I could never write another book, even if I fail miserably at everything this world has to offer, the Lord delights over me. And not because of anything I could do or be. He delights over me because he made me.
Right.
And that's it.
Yes.
He loves me.
Amen. Yeah.
And
yeah.
and he will protect me and he will keep me in his hand.
I
And
think that's so important, Susie. Thank you for that word, because he's so glad for us with our Michigan notables. Like, like he's so glad for us that the world, I think, notices and recognizes and affirms. But he always, I believe, calls us into a deeper understanding of, but you don't need that. You don't need that, because I am the one, right? Just as you're saying, I am the one that created you, gifted you, called you. And I'm just as happy with you if you're writing award-winning novels as I am if you're cleaning your kitchen. This doesn't make no difference to me, right?
Exactly.
And I have to learn and relearn that, actually, personally, because I can get so caught up in my need to do that I let go of my need to be. And I appreciate you sharing that with us so much. Thank you for letting us in that little piece of your story. I appreciate it. So ladies, what do you want to anything about the book that you want to just comment on, ask Susie, something you circle back to that you wanted to say that I talked too much and didn't let you?
Walt. Let's talk about Walt.
Okay.
Where did he come into the story for you? Just writing letters and, that childhood person, friend of hers.
Walt was a difficult character because he was just going to be a villain type boy that it was going to break her heart, because how many of us have gotten our hearts broken when we were 18, 19 years old? But then as I was writing him, I felt compassion for him. And I was like, nope, delete, because no, I don't feel sorry for him. But then it kept coming out that he had it rough. Boys that go to war, they don't come back the same.
Mhm.
They come back wounded, whether they're physical or mental, spiritual, emotional. And so he was represented in that. And I sat down with a man when I was researching for this book. His name is Carl, and he's a veteran of Vietnam War. And when I was talking to him, he talked about some of the mistakes he made when he came home, and the missteps he made and the people he hurt. And I could not help but feel compassion for Carl, the real guy.
Mhm.
And so I thought, there's more to Walt. I need to flesh him out and make him a real person
Mhm.
and really give him his due,
Yeah.
because his parents never did.
Yeah. Mhm.
And
Yeah.
and he may never have given himself it. So I wanted to represent him and with more humanity.
Yeah, I didn't dislike him at all. That's kind of why I wondered where you were going with that, because
Mhm.
I didn't, they was like, oh, he's bad. I'm like, I don't think he's all that bad. So I appreciate
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
And my last thing, and I'll be quiet, was I really liked, the life, I'm going to call the life lesson of don't duck and cover, pay attention, watch everything. I loved, that was great. That's a
Thank
big
you.
life lesson.
That actually, I say it to myself still,
Mhm.
because especially over the past year, we had a pandemic, if you didn't know. And and it's so easy just to kind of be like, I'm gonna go into my little hole, and I'm gonna pretend that everything's fine, and I'm going to just, avoid the scary things of life. But that's not really living. We miss out on so much. And I remember when I was a kid, my mom talking about the fallout shelter drills, where they'd go under their desk and they duck and cover. And then I watched the video, and it was this little turtle, on a reel to reel they used to play for the kids, and the turtle would walk around and they'd sing this duck and cover song, and he didn't, and he blew up. And I was like,
Oh, gosh.
what?
Maria's a first grade teacher, and
Yeah.
she's like, oh no, don't show that to the children.
Yeah, he would be horrified.
And now you understand the boomer generation. But but like, I was just thinking, like, terrifying the children, like these poor children. But yeah, it was definitely something that Annie needed. And I think I relate to Annie more than I have to almost any other character I've written. So I was really saying it to myself.
Yeah.
I wanted to just say I love the end of the book, and I don't want to say much because spoilers, right?
Right. Yeah. I know. It's so
I
tempting,
was
though.
thinking, how can I say something without saying something? But what I can say is I appreciated the hopeful note that it ended on. And so a book that could have had so many issues, and a time of life where there was a lot of darkness and a lot of very hard things, there was a hopeful resolve at the end. And so it just, as a reader, it helped my spirit to be able to move forward. We've all read those books that leave things unresolved. And sometimes that's okay, leaves us with these big questions. And there were still questions, but I just appreciated, you kind of bring us along. We're like friends with these people by the end. Like, they were people in our church or our town. And so to leave us with hope, like, thank you for doing that. I'm so thankful for the hope.
Well, so just a little behind the curtain insider news here. I planned my novel on a calendar. So, like, on this day, this happens, and this is what happened in history. This was the weather. This was the, and what happens in the novel.
Neat.
And this particular novel ends, and I think it's April 7th, 1968. And on April 8th was the day that Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. And I had to finish it before that, because I knew that the assassination of King would muddy all the waters.
It just opens up a whole different set of issues, does it not? Right. Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And especially for David and Annie.
Yes.
They couldn't live that yet.
Yes.
And so Yeah, that was a hard choice, but it was, I believe, the right choice. Yeah. And that David and Annie scene, like, spoiler alert.
No.
There's a kiss. Okay. It doesn't ruin anything.
No, it doesn't. No.
But my editor, I was sitting at breakfast with her after she read through it the first time, and she hit the table with her fist and said, "You ripped me off." And I was like, I've met you twice, and I'm
this is a little intense for me. Yeah.
so afraid. And we live in the same town, so now we see each other more, and I've come to expect the violence of Kelsey. But
I'm a novelist. Don't hurt me.
Oh, Kelsey. But you ripped me off, and I was like, it's a long novel. What else did you want? And she said, "You can't just have him kiss her on the hand." And I was like, "Why not?" I don't write romance.
Yeah.
And so she said, "You are going to write a kiss. You are." And I said, "I have no idea how to do it. So if I'm going to do it, it has to be my way."
Yeah.
So there was a quirky little,
Mhm.
but I thought she was going to stab me with her little diner knife.
That's funny.
So I guess that would be a question I have. Have you considered a sequel for this family? I mean, do you write sequels? Or yours are standalones, right? You don't do series, or do you have series?
I've only done one series,
Okay.
and it was set during the Great Depression,
Okay,
which
I've not read.
I highly recommend that series. Please.
I will link all that in the show notes.
Thank you. But no, I
The
think I'm done
Jacobsons
with.
are just, yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
Sometimes you have to let it be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I've already put them through enough, and
Mhm.
and you can't write a novel where everything is great,
Mhm.
because nobody wants to read it for some reason.
Mhm.
Maria does.
All right. I'll write it for you, Maria.
We love Maria. I want to ask Lisa Littlewood this, because we talked about this. So Maria likes her romance all tied up in a bow. Lisa likes someone to get killed. Lisa Littlewood, what do you most look for in your fiction?
I like shiny, happy stories.
Yeah.
Yeah. Woo, high five.
There's too much craziness going on in the world. I
Yeah,
need
exactly.
shiny, happy in my reading.
And the girls make fun of me because no matter how light the story seems, I can go deep and find something spiritual to talk about. It's just my
Right.
superpower. I don't know what to
Right.
say. Susie, this has been so delightful. Before we let you go, I always like to end on this question. Is there anything at all right now in your life that you are reading, watching, listening to, doing, studying, anything goes, that's bringing you joy and keeping you connected to God? Anything like that you could share with us?
Yes, I am speeding toward a deadline, and so there's all this.
Yeah.
But I committed to doing 100 days of walking or running with a bunch of people from church, and this bunch of people from church has become a bunch of people from across the country. So getting out and walking around, it doesn't matter how long I walk, and I just being out in God's creation, it does something to me that is just really great. And especially living in Michigan, you can't get out all the time or else your nose will freeze off. But so it's just been so refreshing to my spirit. And I usually do not walk alone. I make my family go with me. I meet up with a friend to hike or something. And it's just been so good for me. And I love birds. So getting to see the birds and listening to them sing, and remembering that God sees them and God sees me, and we matter.
Yeah.
It's just been so good for me, so good. And I just hope that people can make a commitment to do things like that. And then when you do, just remember to say, wow, that's a great tree. Thank you for making that tree.
Mhm.
Just those little things we can be grateful for. It makes a big difference in who we are as people and as children of God.
Yeah. I love that. And I think it's really important that you're doing that when you're up against a deadline, because I think we can get whatever our deadline happens to be, because we all can feel that pressure, depending on what our life's work is. And that's the time when you can withdraw and say, no, I just got to keep my head down and work. And I think no matter what, we're so much more productive and joyful in our productivity when we lift our head from time to time and acknowledge the one who has, made it all, as you said well earlier. Yeah. That's great. Yeah. And thank you for spending an hour with us when you're up against a deadline. We really appreciate that all the more. Not quite, but almost. Yes. And so we
Like
are
that.
so glad to be able to spend this time with you tonight, Susie. Her book is All Manner of Things, the one that we've been talking about tonight. And again, I will link her stuff in the show notes, her website, her Facebook, Instagram, any other fun place you want to find Susie. I think probably all that stuff. Is it all linked from your website if they want to follow you, and newsletters and all that kind of stuff? I bet you send all kinds of stuff out, which would be fantastic. And the new book will launch what day? Something in August. Do I remember this right?
July 6th.
July 6th. I'm totally wrong. Sorry. July 6th, The Nature of Birds. And it will be available also wherever books are sold. Do you have a favorite indie book that you like to, bookstore that you like to send us to?
Baker Book House is my favorite. And if you order from them, I'm pretty sure you'll get it before the release date.
I love that. Yes, we'll link that as well. So, Susie, thank you very much. Ladies, as always, Lisa, and Maria, thank you guys for joining us. And until next time, peace.
Thank you.
Thank you. As much as I loved talking about all manner of things, the comment from Susie that has stayed in my heart since our time together is what she said about God delighting in her. Whether she writes or doesn't, whether she attains success by the standards of the world or doesn't, nothing alters that she is God's creation, and because of that truth alone, God looks upon her with delight. Susie's confidence in that sparked something in me and encouraged me to more deeply believe this about myself too, that God delights in me simply because I am his creation. I hope you hear God reminding you that you are both his creation and his delight. Thank you so much for listening. I pray wherever your day takes you, you are walking in the confident knowledge that you are a beloved, cherished child of God. Peace.